demons flying in the sky. I can fly twice as high. Take a look. It's in a book. The Necronomicon. The Necronomicon.
Here at Tales at Midnight, we proudly indulge in classic literature, such as Mary Shelley, Bram Stoker, or Kenneth Anger. What are you reading, Bugsy?
Well, I like a book with a lot of pictures.
Give it here. Give it. No wonder your growth was stunted.
Oh, come on, I was just getting to the good part.
Oh, I could see that.
So much for a happy ending.
I won't have anyone reading that kind of smut under my roof. Here. Read this instead.
Oh, how come?
Because, Bugsy, you can't have one without the other. Sex and violence. You see, I'm a firm believer
So was I.
Stop! I'm a firm believer in a healthy balance.
Sheesh.
Now here. Go, march, young man.
No fun at all.
In 2 months' time, the genius that was H.P. Lovecraft will have been dead for 82 years. A loss still grieved by the wise that's left in your world. But, he and I keep in touch. Although his work was relegated to cheap pulp fiction magazines, this master of the macabre defied the odds and single-handedly reshaped the world of horror literature. An entire subgenre has been christened Lovecraftian in his honor, used to define works of horror that establish the human race as insignificant, in parallel to monolithic evils of elder gods and monsters. His works have created in the minds of countless troubled readers unspeakable horrors, each page describing in vivid detail the hideous things that most assuredly will destroy the mind and body of our helpless protagonists, if not the world at large. With both of Lovecraft's parents dying in a madhouse, he was something of an authority on the subject of lunatic visions. The blaspheming creatures of the Lovecraft Mythos remain unsurpassed in depth and magnitude. Some of his finest works include The Call of Cthulhu, Dreams in the Witch's House, The Thing at the Doorstep, Pickman's Model, and The Shadow over Innsmouth. It is in The Shadow over Innsmouth that we are introduced to a self-isolated seafaring community. The denizens bear an uncanny resemblance to the fish they sell, unfortunate victims of what is called the Innsmouth look. As the story unfolds, we become painfully aware that the town in a moment of desperation made a pact with the Deep Ones, unholy demigods that lived within the ocean. The Innsmouth look being the consequence of humans breeding with these ancient amphibious creatures, redefining that old cliche, look what the tide washed in. You might find this tale amusing, beyond belief, hard to swallow. Careful. As they say, don't judge a book by its cover. How would you feel if I told you something uncannily reminiscent of these creatures exists in your world? As though the tapping of each key at Lovecraft's typewriter scraped away another layer of your reality. Innsmouth does not exist. However, Loveland, Ohio does. Even the name bears a disturbing resemblance to my author friend, don't you think? It was late one evening in May of 1955 when a frantic salesman rushed into a late-night diner. There he explained to concerned onlookers that he was taking the deserted stretch of road along the Miami River as a shortcut to make it in time for his morning meeting in Loveland. As his car weaved in and out of curves, an unshakable sense of dread seemed to come over him. It wasn't until he came to Jackson Street Bridge that he knew why. There, standing frozen in the beam of his headlights, stood 3 figures. They stood, but were not at all human. The figures glaring back at him resembled huge toads. Their heads were flat, their mouths stretched wide, and their golden eyes squinted atop their heads. Their enormous hands were webbed with hook-like claws at the tip of each finger. These he noticed when one of them pointed at him, while gibbering an unknown language to the others. The creatures spoke to one another for a while, as if discussing what should be done with this bumbling intruder. The businessman, not knowing what else to do, slammed his foot on the accelerator, stopping just shy of the 3 frogmen who were unfazed by the charging vehicle. Instead, the tallest, who looked to be the leader, pushed aside the other 2, raising in the air what can only be described as a scepter. The scepter emitted a strange purple glow as the sky seemed to swirl above it, and then suddenly a bolt of lightning blasted from its tip. With that, the figures disappeared, dematerializing into the night air. It's also worth mentioning that in 1955 a similar incident happened 100 miles away in Evansville, Indiana, the connection being they both happened on or in the Ohio River. Mrs. Naomi Johnson, her son, and best friend went to the Ohio River to try to beat the heat one balmy August afternoon. Summer fun ensued, that is until Naomi waded further into the river. Naomi was yanked beneath the water, but soon resurfaced gasping for air. She screamed, "Something grabbed me," before being dragged back down again. After a few terrifying moments, Naomi was able to limp to shore before collapsing in shock. Her legs from knee to ankle were covered in deep slashes. When paramedics arrived, they noted a dark blue sludge in the shape of hands wrapped around her legs. This slime that stained Naomi's skin was determined to be mud from deep within inside a cave. Naomi described the creature she saw in fleeting glimpses beneath the water also as a frog-like reptilian creature in the shape of a man. Of course, very few were able to hear this description before an alleged man in black told her to keep her damn mouth shut. From then on, the frogmen caused little trouble. That is until March of 1972. A local police officer by the name of Ray Shockey was patrolling his route, again in Loveland. He too was passing the old bridge when he saw what appeared initially to be a dog. In an effort to shoo away the creature, Officer Shockey began tooting his horn. The creature wouldn't budge. Using his police light, he illuminated the figure that remained just beyond the glow of his headlights. It was then he realized this was no dog at all, but a huge toad squatting silently. To his astonishment, the thing rose to its feet and sprinted over the bridge's railings. Shockey returned the following morning with his fellow officers. The only evidence that remained of the frogman were deep gouges within the bridge's steel beams. Claw marks. Not long after, on St. Patrick's Day, another officer by the name of Mark Matthews had a similar encounter with a frogman on the same bridge. Only this time, Officer Matthews described the creature as being more lizard-like in appearance, with a long whipping tail. After firing at the creature, it screeched and plunged itself into the river below. That same year in Milton, Kentucky, also along the Ohio River, another reptilian creature was seen prowling near the Bluegrass Body Shop and Junkyard. The beast was described as being 15 feet long, from snout to tail, with its face being a combination of frog and iguana. Sightings continue today. Of course, the similarities between these frogmen and the aquatic abominations of Lovecraft's Innsmouth are merely coincidental, right? But what of the ninja? These enormous albino creatures are said to dwell in the icy waters of Antarctica. Their appearances varied slightly among eyewitnesses, but the usual standard is that these beings are the size of whales, humanoid in shape, albino, and very much so real. Though they've existed in Japanese folklore for some time, they've only recently been brought to light for the rest of the world. A whale research ship in 2007 claimed to have encountered the ninja while traveling the ocean. The crew on deck thought at first they were seeing a submarine. That wasn't until the creature rose above the waves, its head and hands made clear as the water came crashing down around the behemoth. Within the mythos created by Howard Phillips Lovecraft, there are many wrathful gods said to dwell deep within the abyss you call the ocean. Could this gigantic creature be something akin to Cthulhu, waiting to realign reality, disturbing the oh-so-delicate balance between good and evil, waiting to enslave the minds and bodies of frail, inconsequential man. One can only dream. It seems that Ed and Lorraine Warren, famed and fraudulent paranormal investigators, fear the Necronomicon. The Necronomicon is a piece of fiction created by Lovecraft that you may recall from various pop culture references. We have a clip of the Ghostbusters themselves claiming to have a copy of the actual Necronomicon. Their occult museum is most assuredly legitimate, as the Dawn Post masks and dime store Halloween decorations would suggest. Of course, if one is trying to suppress the forces of darkness, it only makes sense to capitalize on them with a cheap local kiddie special. Bugsy, roll the footage.
We head over this way, but while we're heading this way right here, I see this book here. This book, it says Book of Shadows, Necronomicon. Can you tell me what that is?
Yes, that's one of the original books of shadows, which were written in the medieval days. And this one here was translated into English. Just the reading of that book has had terrible results for many people. This is not a book that anyone should ever buy, a book of shadows. It goes into the incantations of devils and demons and rituals.
You might be saying to yourselves, "But Spooky, how do you know they're frauds?" Well, if their proud involvement in the Amityville horror case wasn't enough, in which both George and Kathy Lutz admitted to fabricating, this might persuade you. I have the only copy of the Necronomicon that Lovecraft wrote into reality, a gift given to me shortly before his death. I was trusted and tasked with the dubious honor of maintaining Lovecraft's connection to this world. Isn't that right, old friend? See? Told you so. Get it? Told you so? Allow me to introduce the original Frog Prince, the Loveland Frog Man. Oh, what's the matter, dear? You look, jumpy. I'd ask you if you had a frog in your throat, but, he's standing right next to me. Don't be rude. After all, it isn't easy being green. Say hello. No? Well then. Hand me the book, old friend, and we'll teach them some manners. Bound within this volume is Lovecraft's soul, the evils he conceived of, and the means of making both a reality once more. When I'm through polluting your world, you can find it at your local library. If you have a library card.
You too could be our next show subject of interest. Only time can tell for certain. But if I were you, I would err on the side of caution. And as always, remember me as you stroll by. If you like Darshan, then please subscribe. As we are now, so you must be. Prepare for death and follow me. I come upon you as a thought, the souls of Cthulhu.
Demons flying in the sky! I can fly twice as high! Take a look! It's in a book! The